Good morning, all of you. Now, today, we are going to talk about Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman is one of the most influential poets in the American canon, generally called the father of free verse. Whitman was a poet, an essayist, a journalist, a teacher, a government clerk, but his reputation, his name and fame rests on the poetical works that he produced. He was born on May 31st, 1819 in West Hills, Long Island, the second of 9 children. After some time, his family moved to Brooklyn, where he attended school for a few years. Young Whitman took to reading at an early age. By 1830, his formal education was over, and for the next 5 years, he entered the printing trade. For about 5 years, he taught in a school on Long Island. During this time, he also founded the weekly newspaper Long Island. By 1841, Whitman was in New York City, where his interests turned to journalism. His short stories and poetry of this period were indistinguishable from the popular work of the day, as was his first temperance novel, Franklin Evans. For the next few years, Whitman edited several newspapers and contributed to others. Now, not much is known of Whitman's literary activities that can account for his sudden transformation from journalist and hack writer into a great revolutionary poet. The first edition of his famous work, Leaves of Grass, opened with a rather casual portrait of Whitman, the self-professed poet of the people. Leaves of Grass came out in the year 1855. The Americans of all nations at any time upon the earth have probably the fullest poetical nature. That's what he considered the Americans to be. People possessing a poetical nature. And in his words, the United Nations or the United States themselves are essentially the greatest poem. The largeness and nature or the nation were monstrous without a corresponding largeness and generosity of the spirit of the citizens. The first edition of the Leaves of Grass contained only 12 poems. He went on adding some more poems, expanding his work, and this change continued till he left this mortal world. Now, we can say the Leaves of Grass is a spiritual autobiography, expanded and revised 9 times throughout Whitman's life. It tells the story of an enchanted observer who says who he is at every opportunity and claims what he loves by naming it. This is no book. Who touches this touches a man. The famous poem, Song of Myself, we find in this first edition. It is the celebration of self, both as an individual and as a part of the universe. The comments received by this book were very strange. Somebody said that it is too boldly new and strange to win the attention of reviews or readers who had fixed ideas about poetry. The comment of Emerson, we should try to see what Emerson wrote about it, because he had sent a copy of the book to Emerson, who he regarded very much. Now, he said, Emerson wrote about it, I find it the most extraordinary piece of wit and wisdom. Now, we cannot understand the poems written by Whitman if we cannot admire, we cannot appreciate unless and until we just draw our attention to the poetic devices used by Whitman. Certainly, they were different from those of other poets. He was unique. He was a person who wanted to add his own original style, and he was a person who wanted to reach his readers or the common people through his poems. Now, we'll take these devices one by one. First of all, we find that his poems abound in alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of the same sound. Then assonance, imagery, onomatopoeia, catalog, personification, metaphor, consonance, parallel structure, repetition, anaphora, cadence, informal or slang, then invented words, tone. Invented words or phrases also, like in that poem, Crossing Brooklyn Ferry, he says, sun half an hour high. Now, the repetition of the same or similar consonant sounds, words that are close together. I quote from Song of Myself, I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. Now, it is used to create musical effects and to establish mood. I loaf assonance is the repetition of the similar vowel sounds followed by different consonant sounds, especially in words that are close together. Again, from that same poem, Song of Myself, I loaf and invite my soul, I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. Now, alliteration, consonance and assonance are used to create musical effects and to establish mood and tone. Imagery, the use of language to evoke a mental picture or a concrete sensation of a person, place, thing, or idea. For example, alone far in the wilds and mountains I hunt, wandering amazed at my own lightness and glee. In the late afternoon, choosing a safe spot to pass the night, kindling a fire and broiling the fresh killed game, falling asleep on the gathered leaves with my dog and gun by my side. Similarly, we have similes and metaphors. Simile means making a comparison between two unlike things using like, as, or then. Metaphor is implied simile, or we can say making the same comparison without the comparative language. I just quote some lines from Dreams by Langston Hughes. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow. Whitman has also made use of personification. Personification means giving human qualities to animals or non-living things. Time stood still, the car hugged the road. Onomatopoeia, the use of words whose sound imitates or suggests its meaning, like buzz, bing, pow, zoom, clomb, etc. This form of imagery appeals to the sense of hearing. The runaway slave came to my house and stopped outside. I heard his motions crackling the twigs of the wood pile. Another feature of the conspicuous feature of Whitman's poems is catalogue. Catalogue means a list of people, things, or events. Whitman uses long descriptive lists to express the voice of America. I hear America singing. The varied carols I hear, those of mechanics, the carpenters singing, the masons singing, the boatmen singing, the woodcutters' song. Now, in many of the poems, we will find, or we do find, many of such lists. Now, we can say that he is a poet who does not fail to give a great variety and the minute description of the variety. It is as if a person wants to just pour his heart out in as clear a way as possible. And this is the peculiarity of the poetic writings of Whitman. Now, parallel structure means the repetition of words or phrases that have similar grammatical structure. Again, from Song of Myself, I am the hounded slave. I wince at the bite of the dogs. I clutch the rails of the fence. My gore drips. Now, time from Brooklyn Ferry. It avails not. Time avails not. Distance avails not. Place avails not. Now, he has made use of repetition for the sake of emphasizing the idea he wants to convey. Now, cadence is a quality that we find in the poems of Whitman. Cadence means the natural rhythmic rise and fall of language as it is normally spoken. It is not written to a particular predictable meter of language. Free verse means poetry not conforming to a regular meter or rhyme scheme. Walt Whitman was the first American poet to use free verse. Now, we have seen that Walt Whitman was a poet, original in his own sense. He did not try to copy other poets. He was a poet who was in between, or you can say in the middle of, transcendentalism and realism. His poetry has some elements of transcendentalism, for in Passage of India, we find him talking about soul going on a journey. He did believe in universal soul. He did believe in the link or the connection between past, present, and future. When we read his poem, Crossing Brooklyn Ferry, we find him talking to the fellow commuters, and he says that it was so 1,000 years ago, it would be so in future also. So there is a sense of connectivity. And then he says, time avails not, distance avails not, place avails not. So it was in the past, so it is in the present, and so it will be in the future. He considers himself to be part of a scheme, an integrated scheme. He does mention myself disintegrated, yet part of the scheme. So we find him talking about the connectivity of human beings of all ages. Not only human beings, but even the objects of nature. Water was to him a symbol of spirituality, and land a symbol of the physical. Now, he had a belief in a philosophy of his own, and we do find that the Oriental philosophy also had a great impact on him, as he says that he wants to go to the land of great religious books, great historical monuments, that is India. He wants to reach the place which is famous or which is known for its philosophy. Now, he was also interested in politics, and we are not sure that he was well, of course, he said that he was against slavery, but at the same time, he was of opinion that if he spoke against slavery, it would be something against democratic feelings or so. Well, we are not very clear. I mean, he himself was not very clear. You know, he just changed his attitude towards slavery. Now, of course, his poem, when lilacs where lilacs last bloomed indoor. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't remember the title, but even that elegy written on the occasion of the death of Abraham Lincoln, we find that he was a person, a staunch believer of democracy, and he just had the feeling that all human beings should be treated in an equal manner. Now, Whitman had a style of his own. His tone was that of a writer's attitude, about his study of words and descriptions used by the author. So, tone is dependent upon diction and style. The spotted hawk swoops by and accuses me. He complains of my gab and loitering. I too am not a bit tamed. I too am untranslatable. I sound my barbaric yop over the roofs of the world. So we find that he very often used slang and the everyday words of everyday speech, and in this way he tried to reach the common men through his poems by using the language spoken by common men. Whitman used chunky language to enlarge the possibilities of American poetry. He used slang words or invented words like yop to reflect the depth of heart he hoped to express. In repetition, he trumpeted America as a land of greatness, diversity, passion, and optimism. He wrote of great America. Whitman wrote this collection entitled Leaves of Grass as an epic, a great journey of the poet who is the hero. He is a hero of the future, and all of his actions reflect a spiritual and sometimes physical journey across the landscape of America. Whitman cajoles and thunders. He chants, celebrates, chuckles, and caresses. Whitman spills from his capacious American soul every dreg of un-Englishness, every sweet sound thumbing its nose at traditional subject matter and tone. Here is Samson pulling the house of literature down around his ears, yet singing in the ruins. According to him, the proof of a poet is that his country absorbs him as affectionately as he absorbed it. I think it is enough for today.